The hidden church Lyra held her baby close to her chest as cold wind slipped through the cracks in the old building. The place smelled like dust and forgotten prayers. It was once a place of peace for humans. A church, they called it. But now, it was broken, half-burned and full of shadows. For Lyra, it was the only place left to hide. She had been running for 3 nights. Her feet were bleeding, her skin dirty, and her heart filled with fear. They were chasing her, not because of her, but because of the small child she carried. Her baby. They believed her daughter had something special in her blood, something valuable. They didn't care that the child was innocent. They just wanted to take her. She had begged for help from her own kind, but even they had turned away. No one wanted to fight the soldiers. No one wanted to protect a mother and her weak child. So Lyra ran until she had nowhere else to go. That's when she found the church. It stood silent in the middle of the broken city. Its tall tower was cracked and the windows were gone. But inside, it was dry. Cold, but dry. She used broken wood to build a small place to sleep. She wrapped her baby in the last piece of cloth she had left. She held her close every night, whispering old songs into her ears so she wouldn't cry too loud. Days passed slowly. Lyra didn't move much. Every sound outside made her freeze. Every step, every gust of wind. She was always ready to run, but her legs were weak now, her arms too, and her baby. She was growing quieter. That scared Lyra more than anything. She would rather hear cries than silence. There was no food. The small bits she had taken with her were gone. Her own stomach cried with pain, but she didn't care. She only worried for the little one. The child needed milk, warmth, care, none of which Lyra could give now. Still, she didn't leave the church. The streets outside were full of patrols. Tall machines with scanning eyes floated in the air. If they found her, they would not ask questions. They would take her baby. She would not see her again. So she stayed in the cold, dark place and hoped for something she didn't believe in anymore: mercy. One evening, as the sky turned dark, the wind outside grew louder. Lyra pulled her baby close and covered her ears. She rocked back and forth, whispering, "We will be okay. We will be okay," though she didn't believe her own words. That night, she cried, quietly, so no one would hear. Her tears fell on her child's face. She wiped them away with shaking hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I tried so hard." The baby opened her eyes for a moment and looked at her. Those little eyes, full of pain and confusion, made something in Lyra break. Her whole body shook, not from the cold, but from helplessness. She thought of leaving. Not because she wanted to, but because she didn't want her baby to suffer anymore. If she left her somewhere, maybe someone would find her. Maybe the child would survive. But no, she couldn't do that. She was all her baby had. And even if no one ever came, even if the world had forgotten them, she would stay until her last breath. Suddenly she heard something, a sound she hadn't heard in days. Not wind, not metal. It was footsteps. Her body froze. The sound grew louder. Someone, or something, was walking toward the church. She covered her child's mouth and backed into the shadows. Her heart was beating so fast it hurt. Who would come here? No one used this place. It was dead. Was it one of them? Had they finally found her? The old door creaked. Dust fell from the roof as it slowly opened. Light from outside filled the dark hall. Lyra held her breath. She didn't move. A figure stepped inside. She couldn't see clearly. Her eyes were weak from the dark. But the figure was tall. 2 legs, covered in cloth. A soft light on his chest. It was a human. Why would a human come here? He didn't look like a soldier, no weapon, no armor. He walked slowly, carefully, like he was looking for something, or someone. Lyra gripped the wooden stick she had kept nearby. If he saw her, she would fight. Even if she had no strength left, she would fight for her baby. The human stopped. He turned his head, looking into the darkness. Lyra stepped back, not making a sound. He stood there for a while, then he whispered something. It was a soft voice, kind, not sharp like the soldiers. It didn't make sense to her, but the tone, it didn't sound cruel. Still, she didn't move. After a while, he sighed and turned around. He left a small package near the broken bench. Then he walked away, closing the door behind him. Lyra waited. Minutes passed. Only silence. Then, with slow steps, she crawled forward and opened the package. Inside, there was bread, fresh, soft bread, and a bottle of warm milk. Her hands shook. She looked toward the door again. Someone had come, and maybe, just maybe, someone would come again. The human returns. The next morning, light crept through the broken windows of the church, casting long lines across the cracked stone floor. Lyra hadn't slept. She had held her baby the entire night, listening to every sound outside, waiting for the footsteps to return. But they never did. She didn't know what to think. Why would a human leave food for her? Was it a trap? A trick to draw her out? But the milk had been warm, the bread soft. That kind of kindness couldn't be fake. At least she wanted to believe it couldn't. Her baby was resting more peacefully now, her breathing calm. After days of suffering, she had finally stopped crying from hunger. Lyra had only given the baby small sips of milk, careful not to give too much at once. She had taken just a small bite of bread herself, enough to stay awake. Hours passed. Lyra sat in silence, watching the door. Then, footsteps again. She stood quickly, grabbing her stick, heart pounding. She held her breath as the door opened. It was him again, the same human. This time, he didn't step inside right away. He looked around first, cautious. Then he slowly placed something on the floor near the door, a small pack. Then he took a step back and sat down, on the cold stone. Just like that. Lyra stared at him from the shadows. What was he doing? Why wasn't he forcing his way in? Why didn't he call the soldiers? The man took off his bag. From it, he pulled out something strange, round, glowing slightly. He pressed a button, and soft music filled the air. It was quiet, gentle. The sound echoed off the broken walls, warming the silence. Lyra's baby moved in her arms, blinking at the sound. The human didn't speak. He didn't look around. He just sat there letting the music play. After a few minutes he stood, placed something next to the pack and walked away again. Lyra waited. When it was safe, she crept to the doorway. The pack was full of things: clean water, a thicker blanket, soft baby cloth, and a drawing. It was simple, 2 figures, one small, one tall, holding hands, a heart between them. She stared at it for a long time. Why would a human care? The next day he came again. This time he brought tools. He didn't speak. He didn't try to find her. He just walked around the outside of the church and began repairing one of the broken walls. He hammered wood into place, fixed a fallen window frame, and patched a corner of the roof where rain had been leaking in. Lyra couldn't believe what she was seeing. No words, no demands, just help. Every day he came back. Sometimes he left food. Sometimes it was medicine. Sometimes it was just a book with pictures. He always sat quietly, just outside the door. Never forced her to come out, never searched for her. She began to wait for him. Her fear slowly faded, though she still hid. But now she started to listen more carefully. She began to understand a few of his words, simple ones. Safe. Food. Baby. Cold. He never used weapons. Never shouted. He laughed sometimes, but only softly. Once he played a song and tapped his feet, smiling like he was dancing in his heart. She watched from the shadows, amazed. No one in her life had ever cared for her like this, and this was a human. Her baby began to smile again. She looked stronger now. Her eyes no longer seemed empty. Lyra started to feel hope, even if it was small. Then one evening, Lyra made a choice. She stepped into the light. Not fully, just a little. Enough for him to see her face for the first time. The human froze. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just looked at her. Not with fear. Not with judgment. But with kindness. Lyra nodded once and quickly returned to the dark. He left a small flower near the doorway before he walked away. She picked it up, held it to her chest, and closed her eyes. Something was changing. And for the first time in many cold nights, Lyra believed maybe they weren't alone anymore. Don't hurt us. The next morning, Lyra made a decision she never thought she would. She waited near the broken window, clutching her child, eyes locked on the path the human always took. Her hands were shaking, not from cold this time, but from something else. Fear mixed with a strange kind of trust. She didn't know his name, she didn't know why he kept coming. But her heart told her this human was different. He hadn't tried to take her baby. He hadn't called anyone. He just kept coming back. With gifts, with care, with silence. When she saw him walking again toward the church carrying a new bundle, her breath caught in her throat. He stopped a few feet away from the door and looked up. This time, Lyra didn't hide. She stepped into the light, her baby in one arm, her other hand holding the old wooden stick tightly. Her face was thin, pale, tired, but her eyes were sharp, watching every move he made. The man froze when he saw her. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he slowly, very slowly, crouched down and placed the bundle on the ground. He didn't speak. He didn't lift his hands. Instead, he gently slid the package forward and backed away. Lyra took a small step forward. The baby shifted in her arms, letting out a soft sound. The man looked down, his face calm. He said something quietly. She didn't understand the words, but the tone. It wasn't angry. It wasn't harsh. She could still hear the music from yesterday in her mind, the soft song he had played. She remembered the flower he left behind. These things, they weren't tricks. They felt real. But still, her body stayed tense. "Don't hurt us," she said in her own alien tongue. Her voice cracked. It had been days since she'd spoken out loud. He didn't understand her words. But maybe he didn't need to, because he slowly sat down right there in the dirt and crossed his legs. No weapon, no threat, just presence. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She didn't move closer, not yet. But she watched him. Every second, every breath. The man didn't stare. He looked down, letting her feel like she was in control. It was strange. No one had ever let her feel that before. The baby started crying. A weak, hungry sound. Lyra rocked her gently, stepping back into the shadow of the doorway. But before turning fully, she nodded. Just a little. The man saw it and he smiled. Not a big smile, just a small one, a thankful one. Then he stood up, walked away slowly, and disappeared down the ruined street. Lyra looked down at the bundle he left. Inside was soft fabric, dried fruit, small tools, and something that made her breath catch. A tiny bottle of real medicine. Human medicine. The kind only high-level people could get. She looked at the direction he had gone. Who was he? Why would a human give such things to someone like her? She didn't know. But something inside her shifted that day. The next morning she was waiting again. This time not with a stick, but with a question in her heart. What kind of human risks everything for a stranger and asks for nothing in return? The warmth of a stranger. The fire was small, just a few sticks and broken chair legs arranged into a careful pile near the corner of the old church wall. Lyra had never made a fire before. Her people didn't need them on their homeworld. But now, with her baby shivering in her arms, She remembered something the human had left her, a tiny lighter with a bright red button. She pressed it once. Flame. That night, for the first time in over a week, there was warmth in the church. The heat didn't last long, but it was enough to stop her baby's lips from turning blue. Enough to bring color back into her own frozen hands. Enough to feel, just for a moment, like she wasn't dying. The human had returned again that morning. He didn't speak, didn't come too close. But this time, he brought more than food. A real blanket. Thick, soft, still warm from his bag. A new can of milk, and a small heating tool powered by a solar strip. He even left a small card with symbols on it. She didn't understand it, but it had a drawing again. A circle, with a line under it, like the sun rising over land. Hope, he had drawn hope. Later that day, while her baby finally slept with warmth on her skin, Lyra looked out from the broken church window. She saw him near the ruins of a stone wall, hammering something into place, not for himself, for her. He was building a cover, something to hide the entrance better from scanners above. He did it without asking, without orders, without reward. Just did it. And he came back again before sunset. This time, he didn't bring anything in his hands. He simply sat outside the church door and opened a small box. Inside were strange glowing wires. Music again. He placed one tiny speaker on the ground and let it play. Not loud, just enough to reach inside the church. Lyra listened as the music danced through the air. Her baby stirred, calm. The tune reminded her of something from home, though she had never heard it before. Maybe sorrow sounded the same across the stars. The man closed his eyes and listened too. Lyra finally stepped out, not into the full light, but far enough for him to see her clearly this time. The fire's glow behind her made her shadow long. Her child rested peacefully in a bundle on her back. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The human gave a small wave, not a command, not a signal, just a quiet greeting. And Lyra slowly lifted her hand in return. No words, but everything changed in that one moment. From that day on, she began to wait for his footsteps, not out of fear but out of comfort. The sound of his boots on broken stones was no longer danger. It was safety, a rhythm of kindness in a world that had forgotten both of them. And each time he came, he brought something more than tools, more than food. He brought warmth, not the kind that came from fire or sun, but the warmth of a stranger who chose to care. The hunters are near. The quiet days didn't last. It began with the sound of engines in the sky, low, slow, and heavy. Lyra knew that sound. Her breath caught in her throat the moment she heard it. Her body froze, instinct screaming. Patrol drones. Military kind. Not the kind that watched, the kind that hunted. She ran to the edge of the church and peeked through the broken stone. 3 black crafts hovered over the far buildings, scanning. The area with sharp red lights. Soldiers would be nearby. Maybe already on foot. Maybe tracking energy signatures. Maybe already close enough to smell her fear. She pulled her baby tight to her chest. Her child whimpered softly, still weak but warmer now thanks to the humans. Help. But warmth wouldn't save them from what was coming. She turned quickly to the supplies he had left. There, near the tools, was a broken piece of metal he'd been working on. Some kind of panel with wires. It wasn't finished, but something about it gave her an idea. That night the human returned, just as she had begun setting up her escape. But when he entered the church this time, Lyra didn't greet him. She grabbed his arm and dragged him to the corner, pointing outside, whispering in urgent tones, her alien words fast and afraid. He didn't understand all of it, but her shaking hands and wild eyes told the story clearly. He stepped outside, looked up, and saw them, searchlights cutting the sky. He swore under his breath, then looked back at her. She was holding the baby again, wrapped tightly, ready to run. But there was nowhere left to go. Mark, the human, stopped for only a moment. Then he dropped his bag and got to work. He pulled a strange device from his coat, one she hadn't seen before. It blinked red. He pressed a few buttons, then slammed it on the ground outside. It hummed to life. "Heat decoy," he said, even though she couldn't understand. "They'll chase the wrong signal." She stared at him amazed. He wasn't scared. He wasn't leaving. He was helping. He rushed to the old furnace near the church's wall and lit it, feeding it with dry scraps to boost its signature. He patched the solar unit to overload just enough to send out false signals. All while Lyra watched, breathless. When the drone lights grew closer, Mark grabbed her hand for the first time. She didn't pull away. He led her and the baby to a hidden space beneath the church floor, a small crawl space once used for storage. He gently pushed her inside, covering the hole with rubble and wood. Then he walked out, alone. Lyra pressed her hand over her child's mouth to keep her quiet. Her heart pounded with each second. Outside she could hear voices, robotic ones. Then, the firm stomp of boots. They were here, and the human was standing between them and her. Why? Why would he do this? Why risk his life? Lyra closed her eyes, clutching her baby tighter, praying silently in a language no one remembered anymore. Then silence. She didn't know what had happened, but deep inside her, something told her. He had bought them time, and now she owed him more than thanks. She owed him everything. A price too high. Lyra waited for hours in the cold darkness beneath the floor. Dust filled her lungs. Her baby had fallen asleep against her chest, but she couldn't rest. Her body was still. Her mind raced. What had they done to him? She hadn't. Heard shouting. No blasters. No blood. Just silence. The kind that made your skin crawl. When the sun finally rose, she climbed out slowly, carefully lifting her child. The church looked untouched, but something felt wrong. His tools were still there. His bag too. But not him. He had protected her. And now, he was gone. Lyra searched the ruins nearby, her heart heavy with fear. She moved through alleyways like a ghost hiding behind crumbled walls. Then she saw them, soldiers. 2 of them. Laughing, one of them had something around his wrist. A bloodied cloth. Mark's cloth. They had taken him. They hadn't killed him. But they had captured him. Lyra stood still for a long time. Her legs wanted to run. Her brain screamed to stay hidden. But her heart, the same heart that had felt empty for so long, was now full of something new. Rage. He had risked everything for her and her child. A stranger, a human. He could have walked away any day, but he didn't. He gave her food, gave her safety, gave her warmth. Now he was paying the price. She couldn't let that be the end. That night she returned to the church not to hide, but to prepare. She opened his bag. Inside were tools, wires, old metal pieces, and something else, an old radio. She had seen him fix it before. It could reach other humans, maybe even a rebel outpost, but she didn't use it to call for help. She used it to listen, and she found the signal. They had taken him to the lower zone of the city. The old transport station turned into a prison camp. Not many returned from there. Most never even tried. But Lyra had nothing else to lose. She placed her child in the small hollow under the altar, wrapping her with everything warm she had. She left food beside her, then kissed her daughter's forehead and whispered, "Mama, we'll come back." She wasn't sure if she believed it, but she had to try. Using the tools Mark left, Lyra pieced together scraps of tech, scramblers, signal blockers, even a flash bomb from a damaged drone, the kind of things she never imagined she'd build. But love changes you. It pushes you past fear. By morning, she was ready. No more hiding. No more running. This time, the alien mother was coming for the human who never stopped protecting her, even if it cost her everything. The Church of New Beginning smoke rose from the edge of the city. Alarms screamed in the distance. Sirens echoed down the steel ruins, but Lyra didn't stop running. Her breath was short. Her arms were cut, her legs burned. But she had him, half-conscious, bleeding, but alive, held tightly against her side. Mark had barely spoken since she broke into the prison yard. He had been shocked, not just by the guards or the chaos she caused, but by her, by the fact that she came. He had looked at her through bruised eyes, barely able to whisper, "You came back." She had only nodded, tears falling silently from her cheeks. Now, hours later, they had returned to the only place that had ever felt safe, the broken church. She collapsed onto the stone floor with him, both of them breathing heavily. Mark tried to sit up, but she pushed him back gently. "Rest," she said in a whisper, a word he understood now. From the altar, a small cry echoed. The baby. Mark turned his head weakly. The moment he saw her, safe and warm, his lips curled into a tired smile. Lyra lifted her child into her arms and sat beside him. Her fingers brushed the edge of his hand. He didn't pull away. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. For days, she tended to his wounds using everything he had once brought her. The food, the blankets, the medicine. Now she gave it back to him. Day by day, he grew stronger. And every day, her child giggled more. The church that was once filled with dust and shadows now echoed with the sound of life. Eventually, Mark sat up fully. He had shaved, cleaned his hands, looked more like the man who first walked through that door with a bundle of bread and silence. He took a deep breath and looked around. "This place," he said slowly, "is more than a ruin now." Lyra nodded. He looked at her and said something he had wanted to for a long time. "I didn't find you by accident." She tilted her head. "I followed the sound of crying. I thought I'd find pain, but I found family." Lyra felt something inside her crack open, something she hadn't dared to name. Hope. That night, under the stars through the broken roof, Lyra and Mark sat together. Her child slept between them. A small fire warmed the air. The human reached into his bag and pulled out something new, a small silver ring, crafted from scrap. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Lyra took it in her hand, eyes wide. Then, slowly slipped it onto her finger. From the outside, it still looked like a forgotten building in a forgotten city. But from inside, the old church had become something else entirely. A home. Not just for an alien woman and her child, but for a human who had once walked in alone and never left their side again.